The 1970s in Australia weren't just a decade, they were a high-octane coming-of-age story for a nation on wheels. It was an era of leaded petrol, bench seats, and the legendary Big Three rivalry that divided suburbs, workplaces, and even Sunday dinner tables. If you grew up in the lucky country back then, your identity was often tied to the badge on the grille of the family sedan. The Aussie car culture of the 70s was built on the smell of warm vinyl, the sound of a V8 burble echoing through a quiet cul-de-sac, and the ritual of the Sunday morning wash and wax. These weren't just machines, they were the vessels for our summer holidays, our first dates, and our hard-earned freedom. Today, we're taking a trip back to the bitumen of the 70s to look at 10 iconic cars that every Aussie bloke either owned, drove, or desperately wanted to get his hands on. We start with the undisputed king of the Aussie road, the Holden HQ Kingswood. Released in 1971, the HQ wasn't just a car, it was a national institution. With its sweeping lines and wraparound rear lights, it looked like the future. Every Aussie man has an HQ story, whether it was the family sedan that survived a trek across the Nullarbor or the work ute that never missed a beat. Under the bonnet, you usually found the reliable 202 straight 6 or the thumping 253 V8. The driving experience was pure Australiana, light steering, a 3-on-the-tree column shift, and a suspension that soaked up the corrugated dirt tracks of the outback like a sponge. It was the car that put Australia on wheels, and even today, the sight of an HQ parked at a beach brings back memories of salt air and simpler times. Moving on from the General, we find the arch rival, the Ford Falcon XA and XB series. This was the car that brought Coke bottle styling to the local suburbs. It was muscular, aggressive, and looked fast, even when it was parked in the driveway. If your old man was a Ford man, the Falcon was his pride and joy. The XB, in particular, became a cultural icon, immortalised as the Interceptor in Mad Max. But for the average bloke, it was the 302 or 351 Cleveland V8 that provided the soundtrack to the 70s. Drivers remembered the heavy feel of the steering and the way the nose would lift under hard acceleration. It was a car for the open road, built for long hauls between capital cities with the windows down and the AM radio humming. Following the heavy hitters from Holden and Ford, we encounter the third force, the Chrysler Valiant. In the early 70s, the VH Valiant was a beast of a car, literally the widest car built in Australia at the time. It had a presence that the others couldn't match, especially when equipped with the legendary Hemi 6-cylinder engine. The Hemi 265 was a masterpiece of Aussie engineering, often outperforming the V8s of its rivals. Blokes remember the Valiant for its effortless cruising and the distinctive whine of the starter motor. It was the choice for the man who wanted something a bit different, a bit more powerful, and a bit more American in its styling. It was a sophisticated cruiser that felt like a lounge room on wheels. After the big sedans, we look at the car that proved good things come in small packages, the Holden LJ Tirana. While the Kingswood was for the family, the Tirana was for the young bloke who wanted to go fast. It was compact, nimble, and dominated the mountain at Bathurst in the hands of Peter Brock. The GT RXU1 version was the giant killer, but even the standard 6-cylinder models were a hoot to drive. Drivers remember the tight cabin and the way the car felt tucked in around them. It was the ultimate P-plater dream, often seen with a set of wide mag wheels and a loud exhaust cruising the main street on a Saturday night. It brought a sporty European feel to the Aussie suburbs. Moving from the sporty Tirana to the height of Aussie luxury, the Ford Landau and its sibling, the LTD, this was the car for the man who had made it. With its hidden headlights and vinyl roof, the Landau was a 2-door personal luxury coupe that looked like it belonged in a Hollywood movie. It was powered by the massive 351 V8 and featured power windows and air conditioning, luxuries that were almost unheard of in the early 70s. Blokes remember the waft of the suspension and the silent cabin. It was a statement of success, a car that turned heads at the golf club and proved that Australian manufacturers could build world-class luxury. Following the luxury of the Ford, we encounter the battler of the Aussie car world, the Leyland P76. Released in 1973, it was designed to take on the big three at their own game. It was famous for its wedge-shaped styling and the claim that you could fit a 44-gallon drum in the boot. Despite its quirks and the lemon reputation that followed it, the P76 was actually a brilliant car to drive, especially with the lightweight aluminium V8. Blokes who owned them remember the incredible interior space and the smooth ride. It's a car that evokes a unique kind of nostalgia, a what could have been story of Aussie ambition that didn't quite go the distance. After the P76, we returned to the General for the HJ Premier. By the mid-70s, the Premier was the aspirational Holden. It had the 4-headlight front end that distinguished it from the common Kingswood and a plush interior with statesman-style seats. It was the car for the middle management man or the successful farmer. Drivers remember the smell of the high-quality vinyl and the smooth trimatic transmission. It was a car that felt solid and dependable, a symbol of the stable, prosperous Australia of the mid-70s before the oil shocks and inflation started to bite. Moving on from the local iron, we have to acknowledge the Japanese invasion, the Datsun 180B. By the mid-70s, Aussie blokes were starting to realise that these smaller, fuel-efficient cars were actually quite good. The 180B was everywhere, reliable, easy to park, and it didn't rust as fast as the earlier models. It was the car for the young family or the commuter who was tired of the rising price of leaded petrol. Blokes remember the clicky gear shift and the buzzy overhead cam engine. It represented a shift in Aussie behaviour, a move away from the bigger is better mentality towards something more practical and efficient. Following the practical Datsun, we return to pure Aussie muscle, the Chrysler Charger. "Hey Charger" was the catchphrase that defined a generation.
Hey Charger!
With its short wheelbase and aggressive fastback styling, the Charger was arguably the best-looking car ever built in Australia. Whether it was the E49 six-pack or the 318 V8, the Charger was a performance beast. Drivers remember the heavy clutch and the way the car would squat under power. It was a car that demanded respect and provided a level of street cred that was unmatched. It was the ultimate cool car of the 70s, a machine that made every man feel like a racing driver. Finally, we reached the ultimate symbol of 70s Aussie youth culture, the Holden Sandman. This wasn't just a vehicle, it was a lifestyle. With its wild decals, JTS slotted guards, and a mattress in the back, the Sandman was the sin bin of the suburbs. It represented the freedom of the surf culture and the no-worries attitude of the era. Blokes remember the shag pile carpet in the back and the sound of a cassette tape playing skyhooks as they headed down the coast. It was the car that defined the summer of 75, a rolling party that captured the spirit of a generation that lived for the weekend. These 10 cars were more than just a way to get from A to B. They were the steel and chrome backbone of Australian life in the 1970s. They reflected our ambitions, our rivalries, and our unique way of life. Whether you were a Holden man, a Ford man, or a Valiant man, your car was a member of the family. We've moved on to SUVs and electric cars now, but the memories of those bench seats, the manual chokes, and the roar of a V8 on a hot summer afternoon remain etched in our collective memory. They were the cars that built the lucky country. And for those of us who were there, they'll always be the greatest machines to ever grace an Aussie road. The world has changed, but the legend of the Kingswood, the Falcon, and the Charger lives on in every garage and every postcard from down under.